In a world where movies like Jurassic World have become quite common, it's tempting to imagine ourselves thriving in prehistoric times. However, it really wouldn't be as easy as it seems, even with nature on our side. Prehistoric life lacked the tools we rely on today, and meals often came straight from the hunt, raw and unprocessed. So how would a modern human, who is used to having access to technology and the internet, fare without even a pen to jot down their thoughts? Let's talk about it. The prehistoric era spans millions of years before humans began recording their experiences in writing. Since we can't cover it all, we'll focus on three significant periods: the Mesozoic Era, the Stone Age, and the Bronze Age. The Mesozoic Era. Imagine a world where gymnosperms and archosaurian reptiles like dinosaurs were scattered across every corner, all under a warm greenhouse climate, as Pangea gradually split apart. What really are your chances of survival here? The Mesozoic Era is a time that is now often being glamorized in Hollywood, and this era covers roughly 252 to 66 million years ago, including the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. Now, speaking of Pangea, it was quite an isolated continent with vast expanses of land and very few connections between them. This geographical isolation would have made movement very tricky, whether it was for exploring or to speak of refuge from predators. What's more, the ecosystems were vastly different from what we know today. The Mesozoic atmosphere presented a stark difference from the air we breathe today. This period was marked by high levels of carbon dioxide and oxygen alongside higher temperatures. Living here would be like enduring a perpetual greenhouse effect, and even adapting to such conditions would require physiological adaptations far beyond your reach within a reasonable time frame. This means you wouldn't be able to perform basic bodily functions like breathing and temperature regulation. Now add that to having to confront massive predators such as Tyrannosaurus rex and velociraptors alongside towering herbivores like Brachiosaurus and Stegosaurus. These creatures were exceptionally well adapted for survival and would likely perceive you as potential prey due to your small size and vulnerability. Without any modern defensive mechanisms or weaponry, you would find yourself inadequately prepared to fend off such animals, with the danger looming over you every moment you spend in this ancient wilderness. The Mesozoic seas also housed really dangerous marine predators like mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, further heightening the risks associated with going near water bodies. So, in a few words, that meant no water and therefore no survival. But even beyond the threat of predators, you would still face fierce competition for resources, including food, water, and shelter, alongside potential conflicts with other predators and scavengers. That is even in the event that you had the basic survival skills for things like finding food, building shelter, and making tools. Unlike today's diverse range of edible flora and fauna, the Mesozoic era offered nothing similar to the foods you rely upon today. Unfamiliar plants and strange mammals would make hunting and foraging a deadly quest, heightening the risks of malnutrition and poisoning. Now, while viral diseases may have been less common due to the absence of certain species, the risk of parasitic infections and bacterial illnesses was still constant. And in a world without modern medical advancements, even minor ailments or injuries could prove fatal. You would lack the necessary immunity to fight off Mesozoic pathogens and parasites, making you vulnerable to so many health hazards, and this greatly reduces your chances of survival. Not to mention the intense heat, humidity, volcanic activity, and natural disasters of the era, which will add another layer of unpredictability to your daily life. The harsh and unforgiving nature of the Mesozoic landscape would test the strength of even the most resourceful individuals. So, it's safe to say that if you found yourself transported back to the Mesozoic era, survival would be a serious long shot. The Stone Age. The Stone Age, which was a significant era in human history, was characterized by the use of basic stone tools. It lasted for roughly 2.5 million years, ending around 5,000 years ago as people began working with metals like bronze. During this time, humans lived alongside other hominid relatives like Neanderthals and Denisovans. They typically lived in simple shelters and relied on hunting and gathering for food, using primitive tools like stone axes. Now, one of the main problems you would face here was finding enough to eat without becoming someone else's dinner. There's evidence that, in some cases, Stone Age people resorted to cannibalism, as shown by marks on human bones found in a cave in Spain. It's believed that these people were already dead before being eaten. What's more, Stone Age communities migrated to new areas, like Britain, where they used advanced butchering techniques to maximize food from both animals and humans. Then there's the issue of low life expectancy. Life expectancy during the Stone Age was notably low, especially in childhood, which was statistically one of the most difficult periods of life. However, if someone managed to survive childhood, they had a fair chance of reaching their 50th birthday and beyond, thanks to advancements in tool making and technology. But earlier in the Stone Age, the picture was quite different, with the majority of people passing away before the age of 30. Today, many of us are fortunate to have relationships with our grandparents, benefiting from their wisdom and perhaps a stash of candies. However, this wasn't always the case. It is believed that it was only about 30,000 years ago that people began living long enough to meet their grandchildren, creating a major change in what was the norm in the previous eras. The coming of a grandparent generation not only allowed for the transmission of valuable knowledge through oral tradition, but also redistributed some responsibilities to a different demographic group, causing a huge increase in progress. However, this shift occurred toward the end of the Stone Age. Until then, early death was unfortunately common. It's worth mentioning that throughout human history, conflicts and violence have unfortunately been recurring themes, and the Stone Age was no exception. Despite the assumption that early humans might have been more inclined to cooperate for survival, evidence suggests otherwise. Recent discoveries have shed light on the ancient prevalence of intergroup violence and warfare. In one instance, a group of skeletons, including men, women, and children, dating back approximately 10,000 years, was unearthed near Lake Turkana in Kenya. Severe cranial fractures, broken hands and ribs, and the presence of stone projectile tips put in the bones of some individuals all pointed to a brutal and coordinated attack. The fact that the bodies were not buried but left exposed further showed the violent nature of their death. This suggests that these individuals were among the victims of one of the earliest recorded instances of human conflict. Likewise, distressing findings were made near Frankfurt, Germany, in 2006, where the remains of 26 individuals, including children, revealed signs of blunt force trauma with the use of rocks as weapons. Even signs of posthumous mutilation, including smashed legs, suggest a deliberate and gruesome display intended to send a clear message to others in the area. The Bronze Age compared to the Mesozoic Era and the Stone Age. Your odds may improve somewhat in the Bronze Age, but that doesn't guarantee your survival. The Bronze Age saw the widespread adoption of bronze, a copper and tin alloy, for tools, weaponry, and various artifacts. Although bronze tools represented a great leap forward from earlier stone tools, they would still appear basic compared to the modern technology you're accustomed to. Mastering the techniques of working with bronze and other materials would be essential. To understand the immense challenge of surviving in the Bronze Age as a modern human, we'll examine life in one of its most prominent civilizations, ancient Greece. The Greeks are renowned for their contributions to the development of medicine, but these breakthroughs didn't occur until later. It wasn't until approximately the 5th century BC that Greek healers began to approach illness from a scientific perspective. Prior to this, the health of the human body was believed to be subject to divine influence, according to the Ancient History Encyclopedia, even as Greek medicine began to focus on earthly causes and remedies. The notion of illnesses being bestowed by the gods lingered. As a result, patients had various options, such as seeking solace at the shrines and temples of Asclepius. Many even had to go through a healing ritual known as temple sleep or incubation, wherein they slept within the temple premises. Upon waking, patients recounted their dreams to a temple priest, who then prescribed a remedy or pronounced them cured based on this information. Despite the existence of technically trained physicians, there were no formal qualifications required for one to advertise their services as a healer, apart from perhaps a confident declaration of expertise. This was even still prevalent at the time when residents of Athens in 430 BC faced a grim reality, with approximately a 25% chance of meeting a gruesome demise, a mystery that still puzzles scholars. This tragedy unfolded during the Peloponnesian War, as Athens endured a siege and succumbed to a devastating outbreak. Spanning roughly 5 years, the plague inflicted a huge death toll, and the primary source of information on this calamity is the writings of Athenian general Thucydides. However, his descriptions do not clearly align with any specific known plague or illness, although it was initially thought to be either smallpox or typhus. Affected individuals endured fevers, inflamed and bleeding throats, and tongues, ending in violent diarrhea that ended the lives of many victims with no means of treatment for them. Obviously, if you were alive, then you would probably suffer the same fate. Now, here's something even worse. Ancient Greeks were frequently involved in conflicts with other city-states and peoples. In the earliest periods of ancient Greece, armies consisted entirely of civilian volunteers who not only fought, but also provided their own weapons and gear. However, their equipment was often subpar, and in many instances, farmers were taken right from their fields to join the war, only to return to their agricultural duties if they survived. While some received payment, it mainly covered expenses rather than offering actual advancement opportunities. These citizen armies lacked organization, insignias, or markers to show allegiances conveniently. The structure of these armies varied across regions. For instance, in Athens, the roles of citizens were determined by their wealth and social status. Those near the top of the social hierarchy were the horsemen, who could afford horses. Next were the hoplites, equipped with the necessary 70-pound armor and weapons, while the poorest served as foot soldiers, pawns, and sailors. The wealthiest individuals held officer positions, highlighting that, in many respects, little has changed over time. Finally, there's the justice system. It's common for people to provoke each other occasionally, and typically, conflicts are resolved and life moves forward. In the event of laws being violated, there are established channels for redress, usually without resorting to public confrontations in front of a judge where grievances are aired until the entire room shares the same hatred towards the accused. However, this was precisely how justice operated during a period in the history of Athens. Any individual could level charges against another, with approximately 96% of surviving court records revolving around personal issues. Laws didn't show acceptable levels of anger in response to various actions, and in court, it was the prosecutor's duty to incite the jury to ensure punishment was meted out and justice served. This led to a system of retribution equal to that of an eye for an eye approach. It may leave you wondering what a justice system based on similar principles would look like in modern times. That concludes our exploration of why survival in the prehistoric ages would be a really difficult task. However, we're still curious. Despite all of the reasons we've given, do you still believe that you could somehow make it through? Share your theories with us in the comments below. If you found this video interesting, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more content like this.